How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th, the original classic film, the one that started the whole franchise. This is from 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham, written by Victor Miller, and stars Adrienne King as the final girl, Alice, and also features a Before They Were Famous appearance by Kevin Bacon. So that's always cool. Kevin Bacon's part is just another one of the counselors, but you still see the sort of flair in him that would make him into a big star later, and it's always cool to see a Before They Were Famous appearance by someone like that. Anyway, this movie, it started off after Halloween. Halloween was a huge success. Halloween started the modern slasher boom, but Friday the 13th is the one that proved you could keep it going and proved that it could be profitable. You know, you have a big new movie, people are going to try to replicate that, but can the success be replicated? And Friday the 13th was the film that proved that it could be, that proved that slashers were a viable option, and it really, Halloween started it, but Friday the 13th proved that it was worth a bunch of people trying it. It was the success happening for a second time. Halloween was not just lightning in a bottle. But that's where its story begins, and I guess before we get into the review, I'll talk a little bit about the importance in slasher history. You see, Halloween was a slasher, but it was also a holiday movie. It took place on Halloween, and you get several movies later on in the slasher cycle that would try to replicate that. You'd get My Bloody Valentine, Happy Birthday to Me, Bloody Birthday. I mean, even Leprechaun is basically a St. Patrick's Day slasher. But Halloween, they knew they wanted to do a holiday movie, and they picked Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th knew they wanted it to be a holiday movie, I mean. They picked Friday the 13th, and that was a very good choice. It's unique enough that not everybody's going to do it. There's not going to be a bunch of people doing this movie over and over. But also, like Halloween, Friday the 13th is kind of an intrinsically scary holiday, known for being unlucky. You know, it's the bad luck day. So it's a good holiday to pick, and the people who made this movie put an ad in the paper, Friday the 13th, the scariest movie you'll ever see, or something like that. They put that ad in the paper to get investors for their movie before they had even wrote a script, but people all of a sudden really wanted to be part of the scariest movie you've ever seen, and that did get funding, so it's kind of funny there. The big thing that Friday the 13th brought that Halloween didn't have is more blood and gore. This has special effects work by special effects legend Tom Savini, who you may know for several things, including Dawn of the Dead. Tom Savini came in and gave us some pretty cool effects to this movie. It's not incredibly over-the-top, bloody and gory by today's standards, but it was significantly more than Halloween, and there's some pretty cool effects in here. Keep in mind, Halloween was trying to be very cinematic minimalism, so it didn't really fit with what they were trying to do. But another big thing is this movie took the slasher history, and granted Halloween did have the slasher history involved with it as well, but it went more back to the roots and pulled a lot of things that were in proto-slasher tropes and brought them into the present. You see, after Peeping Tom and Psycho, the slasher timeline kind of splits into three directions. In America, you had gore-sploitation films. Think Herschel Gordon Lewis. And like I said, Friday the 13th has more gore via Tom Savini. Second path was American true crime films. Think Last House on the Left. You know, even if they weren't really true crime, they're inspired by it. And a lot of those movies were, there's a maniac killer in the woods. And this movie very much has that true crime feel. All the characters and the places seem realistic. and everything that happens in this movie is relatively plausible, but this movie does have a sense of gritty realism behind it and pulls in the American true crime proto-slashers. Also, in Italy, you had the Giallo movement, which were sort of hyper-violent murder mysteries, and this does pull in a lot of Giallo elements. This movie is heavily inspired by Deep Red and A Bay of Blood. Part 2 would be even more heavily inspired by Bay of Blood, but we'll get into that when we do Part 2. But lots of Giallo elements were pulled back into the center stage here, and if it wasn't for Friday the 13th, these tropes may have not gotten center stage like they did because of it. So even though, Halloween did have a point of view shot, this one uses that a lot more. It has a mystery killer, and the mystery killer's plot is kind of this out-of-nowhere monkey wrench that feels very much like a Giallo plot in motivation. So it's cool to see it take these tropes and repurpose them here. It really took all the proto-slasher stuff that Halloween missed and brought it back to the center stage. And a lot of the tropes that we have, Halloween started the slasher movement, but a lot of the tropes were because of Friday the 13th. So anyway, you can think of Halloween and Friday the 13th as the 1-2 punch that got the 80s slasher boom going. Halloween was the initial spark, while Friday the 13th proved that the success could be replicated and inspired tons of other filmmakers to go out there and give the genre a shot. So both films are very important in slasher history. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk a bit about the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the story is about. We open up in the past at Camp Crystal Lake, a very, very famous horror setting, and these two counselors, a young boy and a young girl, sneak off and start making out. They're eventually found by the point of view camera person, and even though they said, look, we weren't really doing anything, they're still killed off. Now, them being killed causes Camp Crystal Lake to close for a long time, and it becomes abandoned. We jump forward in time to when the rest of the movie takes place, and we find that this guy, an investor, has opened up Camp Crystal Lake again. He thinks it's been enough time, and he thinks he can do it. He had tried doing it before, and a few workmen had some accidents, and it was considered a bad luck project, but he thinks he has it this time, and we meet our first character, a hitchhiker, a young girl, who is hitchhiking to Camp Crystal Lake to work. She's a counselor there, and as she gets closer and closer, she meets the people of the closest small town to the camp, and they tell her that it's got a death curse, as the famous guy on the bike says, and they also tell her it has the nickname Camp Blood, and they tell her about the murders there years ago. But she decides to continue anyway. The last person that picks her up, the last person she's hitchhiking from, is the point of view camera person who goes past the place to turn onto the camp for, and she's like, whoa, you're going past the place to turn, shouldn't we be back there? And all of a sudden, something's up, and the point of view camera person chases her into the woods and kills her, so we know the killer from way back then is still around. So that's going to be a thing later. We eventually meet a couple other counselors pulling in. They're getting there super early so that they have time to rebuild the whole camp. They're camp counselors, but they're also handyman for the time being. And we find that even though a bunch of counselors came right at once, two people were already there, the boss and Alice. Alice is going to be your main protagonist, and she, kind of like Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis, is one of those people that helps set the final girl trope, but also in retrospect doesn't follow it exactly to a T. Final girl, she's more level-headed and a better thinker than a lot of them, and at the end of the movie you can see why she's the one who survives. But at the same time, she drinks, she smokes, and she's probably sleeping with the boss. it's never 100% spelled out. So not 100% perfect final girl, but a really good character nonetheless. You get to see also that Alice is from California. Friday the 13th is set in New Jersey, so she's on the opposite coast of where she grew up. So you see that even though she fits in socially well enough, she's kind of an outsider, being from a very far away place and trying to start a new life on her own in a new place. It's really makes her quite interesting. Alice also, this is one of the few times when the name Alice is used and it's not a big overt reference to Alice in Wonderland, although part of me wonders if it's a reference to Alice, Sweet Alice, a famous proto-slasher film, really good, you should check it out. These people who made this movie were obviously big proto-slasher geeks, and I could totally see them getting the name from that. But anyway, we do get to meet a couple of the other counselors, including Kevin Bacon, and you do get to see that they're real kids. You know, later on, slasher teens have a reputation for being kind of obnoxious, but these, you know, they are goofy, they'll run around and dance and be idiots, but they feel like real people, and that really does help the realism. You know, it's kind of like how found footage characters would act very realistic later on, and it really does help it. They are really good realistic teens. Eventually, though, the boss leaves for the day. All the counselors are staying there, and when the boss is away, the counselors are a little more rowdy. They're out playing games, doing stuff they probably shouldn't, and getting into a little bit of mischief. But why they go out, they start to spread out. This is a big place, and they slowly, one by one, get picked off by the mysterious killer. And let's talk a bit about the pros. One, this movie has a ton of atmosphere. It's got the big, rundown Camp Crystal Lake. You know, a lot of the other Friday the 13th movies have good, scary parts, but this is definitely the creepiest. You want to go for a creepy atmosphere? Big camp, and I do want to stress that. There are whole giant sets that are huge that you have no idea where they are in relation to one another. You know, you get the bay, which has a whole big, you know, dock and a whole beach and canoe area. You have an archery range, which is huge, and you only see it a couple times. Huge, and you do get the sense that Camp Crystal Lake, like a real camp, is big and sprawling, and if you were being murdered, and even if you were screaming, if someone's not in the immediate building surrounding you, they may not hear you, and you can see it's a big place, and you might even get lost there. So, really good set, plus it is grungy and run down. They're rebuilding it after all, so it's not clean and fresh. Really helps the creepy atmosphere. And then on top of all that, it starts raining. You hear the rain pattering against the walls, and you get the sense that there's a big world out there. Anybody could be out there, but you're trapped in this little place against the rain, and if you go out, you have to get a coat and huddle close, and the rain's pouring in on you. Really good, really creepy movie with a ton of atmosphere, and that is a bunch of points right there. And I really do like Camp Crystal Lake, and actually, in retrospect, very few of the Friday the 13th movies actually use Camp Crystal Lake, which is kind of sad because it's a really cool location. Really do love it. But anyway, they start to get picked off one by one, and some really good creative kills. You know, you do have Tom Savini there. You get the sense they wander off and get lost, and you get the whole, where's so-and-so, where's so-and-so? But because, you know, you feel the whole sense that it's big, and you slip away from the group, and then you get yanked away violently and killed, you know, it really does up the tension. You know, there's a bunch of tension. The killer's like a big bomb. Everybody is just getting pulled away unexpectedly, one by one, until it gets down to your final girl. And this final chase sequence, you see her, she knows there's a killer out there, and she has to do everything right. You see her run and panic, but keep that level head and try her best to, you know, put stuff in front of doors, hide. She's gonna fight. What weapon does she use? And Alice is really clever, and this final sequence is really good, leading to a very, very iconic moment. And I really do love the ending. But anyway, like I said, if you're expecting what the series is known for, expect it to be a little different. But this is a creepier movie than a lot of people let on, with a big set. And I really do appreciate this movie. I really do like the big open atmosphere and introducing a lot of blood and gore to the kills. The Friday the 13th series, a lot of people just think, oh, it's another slasher, and they cranked out, 12 of them. But you go back and look at what it did and how much it did for the slasher genre, especially this one. It's really big and important, and I really do love this movie, and I do love that nice creepy ending there. Anyway, this is definitely a classic, and I obviously recommend it. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Just know Friday the 13th doesn't get to be what it's known for till part 3. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist down there. If you guys want to see more, you can click right there and see more. Have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.